top. If you print the notes off of the computer, then that's going to give you the fill-ins. This is really about the opposite. I'll probably spell opposite wrong because I don't have my spell check on. Opposite of multiplying. So we're going to divide the coefficients and we're going to subtract the exponents. And this is where that magical mystery invisible 1 is going to come in super handy. Okay, you got to remember that. Now, once again, I'm going to do a little bit of overkill to start and do lots of extra steps, and then I'll show you what I would expect it to look like on your paper when you get all done with it. So you just do the things separately. So I do 27 divided by 3, and that gives me a 9. Then I have x to the third divided by x to the third. Remember, you're subtracting the exponents. So that's going to give me x to the 3 minus 3, which is x to the 0. And we all know that anything to the 0 power is 1. So I'm just going to put a 1 there so I remember about that. And then I have y to the 6th divided by y squared. And that's just going to give me y to the 4th. Now, this is kind of redundant. You don't really need to have that there. So an official answer on this one would just be 9y to the 4th. Okay. Well, of course, I went off the page. Limited space here. This is my son's equipment. He's got a great job setting me up. Hopefully, I won't mess it up. Okay. So this one's a little bit different. Here's what you notice. So you got that 4 x's on the bottom and 3 x's on the top. There's more on the bottom, so we're going to wind up with a fraction. It's kind of an unusual circumstance, but you need to see it because, you know, this is one that they give you a multiple choice question on and try and mess with your head. All right, so we do our 96 divided by 16, and that's going to give me a 6. Then I have x to the third divided by x to the 4th. Once again, there's more on the bottom, so my answer is going to have 1x on the bottom. And you put the 1 on there. You don't necessarily have to have it, just so you know. You could have written it as x to the minus 1, but once again, that's not the best way. And then I have y to the 7th divided by y squared, and y to the 5th. So I wind up with a fraction for my answer, but it's much simpler form. And that's what they're going to say. It's going to say, put your answer in simplest form or put your answer in standard form. And the last one, I'm just going to, if I gave this to you on a test or a quiz, if we see each other, this is what I would expect. 42 divided by 14 is 3. 11 x's, take 11 x's away, no x's. 13 y's, take 1 away. Remember that magical mystery invisible 1. Gives me y12. And then the z's got to come along for the ride. You don't want to lose a letter, just like you don't want to lose a term. All right. So that's a monomial divided by a monomial. Pretty straightforward. Divide the numbers, subtract the exponents. Watch out for that trick with the negative exponent. You don't want a negative exponent. And then we're going to do some dividing of a polynomial by a monomial. So you want to write the monomial, the one term, underneath. Can't spell monomial today. That's not good. Monomial. Underneath each term. And then divide the coefficients, subtract the exponents, just like we did up above. Okay, so I kind of did the first one for you to show what it looks like. And then I'll show you what I would anticipate on your paper from the next one. All right, so I look at this, and I have 6 divided by 6 is 1. 4 x's, take 2 away, gives me an x squared. And watch your signs, plus, especially when you have a negative on the bottom, you'll see that in a second. All your signs will change. So I get a plus 2x. Remember that you are dividing, not subtracting. If this was multiple choice, they give you a 6 on your multiple choice. 3 x's, take 2 away, leaves me 1x, or 2x to the first. And then I have a minus sign. 36 divided by 6 is 6. 2 x's, take them away. That cancels to a 1 also. You could write 6 times 1, but once again, not necessary. Final answer right there. Okay. Next one. If I was doing this problem, I said, hey, Mr. D, give me some help with this, I would do this. I'd write the 7x to the 6th, negative 7x to 6 underneath each term. So I have a point of reference. And I wouldn't just divide it once and then keep the rest of it. And then I divide the numbers, subtract the exponents. All right, 42 divided by negative 7 gives me a negative 6. 11 x's, take 6 away, gives me x to the 5th. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. 56 divided by 7 gives me an 8. X to the 9th divided by x to the 6th gives me x to the 3rd. 35 divided by negative 7 gives me a minus 5x. 7 take away 1. 7 take away 6 leaves me with just 1. Once again, I start with 3 terms. I end up with 3 terms. Okay. Now, since I'm on video, remember you can stop it and try it yourself and then see what the answers are. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that in a minute. I think there's one more I want to do, just so we see that. I'm going to do this ugly one on the top of the next page. And then I'll give you a chance to do a couple. And then I will come up with some answers for you. Okay, so this is kind of ugly. But once again, I'm going to write that 9a to the 4th, b to the 3rd underneath each term. 9a to the 4th, b to the 3rd. Okay, 27 divided by 9 is 3. 4 a's take all 4 away, no a's. But I have 6 b's, I take 3 of those away, I get b to the 3rd. Oh, you're not going to have a, b's on all your answers. You got to get used to that. Then you have a plus sign and a 4. And look at that. The a's cancel here and the b's cancel here. You have 4 take away 4, 3 take away 3. So the middle term is just going to be 4. And then I get a plus sign. Now take a look at that. I have 9a to the 4th, b to the 3rd divided by 9a to the 4th, b to the 3rd. And when I divide, oh, Mr. Douglas, what did you forget? Look at that. That should have a C on it. Okay. All right, so thanks for pointing that out to me. And this last term, I got the plus sign. I have the same thing on the top and the bottom. And the common mistake is just leave it blank. Because remember, our mind likes to subtract, not to divide. But when we divide two things that are the same, like 100 divided by 100, you don't get 0, you get 1. Okay, once again, you start with 3 terms. You end with 3 terms. Don't forget that. Super, super important when you go through these things. All right, so take a minute or two and stop the tape and try, let's see, we don't need to do all of these. So we will do the B column. We're going to do the B column on both pages, all right? And then I'll go over, there's only B column on the first page, and then the odds on the second page. So you're doing the B's on page 28, and then the odds on page 29. I'm going to pause it and then magically reappear with numbers filled in and maybe some explanation on a couple of them. And hopefully I won't mess this up. Okay, so let's see how we're doing. And I got my 3 on the B's done. And that's the one on the bottom that plays everybody's heartstrings. You forget that you have that Y 7th and you put it up on the top. That would be not good. So it starts on the bottom, it's going to end on the bottom. We didn't do anything to it. Okay. So that's those 3. The other one was a 6 because the X is canceled. And I didn't lose my Y on 2B. I'm going to slide over to the other side, hopefully. And of course, it's not going to slide all the way because the tripod's in the way. And once again, dividing the numbers, subtracting the exponents, making a nicer Z. And that one down at the bottom, I'm going to do once again, break out your calculator. Nobody expects you to know that 240 divided by 16 is 15. Okay, that's not part of the game. Once again, any calculator you got floating around the house, the one on your phone will cover those. And then I didn't do the last one just so I could do one more with you. And that's going to be 11x squared. 11x squared. Divide the numbers. That's going to give me a 4x to the 8th plus 9x to the 5th minus 8x squared. Okay? So this is dividing a polynomial by a monomial. And once again, you just write down the leftovers. You don't need to write down anything else except for what's left over when you're done. All right, if you look on the next page, it starts out with factoring a polynomial, the greatest common factor. Okay? The greatest common factor is something that your calculator will do for you, and the directions for that are on page 31. Unfortunately, I know some of us don't have a calculator at home. You may want to check into TI Online. I think I posted a site that has a 30-day trial for an Inspire emulator. That's what they call the fancy thing like I have on my smart board at school. You may want to try that if you need to. Or see if you can figure a way to get an Inspire for you to use. But when you're looking for a greatest factoring a polynomial with the greatest common factor, it's going to be numbers and it's going to be letters as well. So you have to really be careful when you're doing this to make sure it's the biggest thing you can divide every term by. All right, so when we're factoring GCF, we're undoing the distributed property. So we're going to unshare because we still care. And we're looking for the greatest common factors of these things here. All right, and sometimes, it's pretty simple. I look at this one and I know that 6 times 3 is 18. So the greatest common factor here isn't 3, it's 6, because you can divide them both by 6. That's also another common area. For this one, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, I can do a 5. All right. For this one, the calculator would come in handy for this one because lots of people think, well, it's going to be, a 4, but it's not going to be a 4 because 22 is not divisible by 4. So it's just going to be a 2. No, that's not a corona cough. All right. Sometimes the GCF is just going to be 1. You can't take anything out of that. Sometimes it's just going to be 1, even though you think, well, 2 times 3 gives me 6, and 6 goes into 8. Well, nope, just 1. But over here, not only do we get the 7, but we can take out an x. Next one, a lot of times with the GCF, it's going to be the smallest number and the lowest exponent. Okay, well, in this case, it's just going to be the lowest number because there's no x over here. To be a greatest common factor, they all have to have it. There's no x here, I can't take out an x. So this is just going to be a 5. Okay, and the next one, same thing. I don't have x's in all the terms, so I can't take x's out. And the biggest common factor of 16, 14, and 20 is just going to be a 2. Okay, and then the last one is just going to be a 1. All those numbers and letters don't have anything in common. Okay, so that's what we have to look at. All right, so let's take a look down at the bottom. I'm going to do some more practice with you. I might have you try a couple of them. All right, so how about I'll do C and F, and you guys can try these. I'll give you a pause on it and throw some answers at it. So here we go. So 14 and 21, they have a common factor of 7. I have 1x here and 2x's there, so I can only take out the 1x. I have 5y's here and 7y's there, so I can take out 5y's. So my GCF on this one is going to be 7xy to the 5th. The next one is, interesting. All right, and once again, I'm pretty good with these numbers things. If you weren't good with numbers, you can just start dividing. It's not particularly fun, but hopefully maybe you think, well, this is divisible by 9, and that's divisible by 9. Well, 5 times 9 is 45, so this one's going to be a 9. If you weren't sure, you could start dividing by 18. Doesn't go into 45. That would be the problem. So you have to think about numbers that go into the smallest number. So that would be 9, 6, 3, 2. All right. And once you take the GCF out, we're going to find out. You're going to look at the result and then see about is there anything else I can take out. So I got a 9, and they all have x's and they all have y's, but they don't all have 2 x's or 2 y's. So it's going to be 9xy. All right, and I'm going to give you a pause, and I'll come back in a minute. Okay, so I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit there. Didn't really explain a lot on how to find that greatest common factor, so I kind of built myself a little table here to work with. So 6 goes into 12, 6 goes into 18, got an x over there for an x. 5 goes into 25, so it's got to be a 5, 2 x's, x squared. But down here, I broke them down. And what I did was I thought of all the numbers that go evenly into these numbers, okay? And if you're looking to do that with your calculator, you can just do 24 divided by 1, 24 divided by 2, and keep going. Like when you do 24 divided by 5, you get 4.8. Not good, so you skip that one. So I went through and got all my factors here. and you look for the biggest one, and I think if you look carefully at this list, you see that they all have an 8. So it's going to be 8 and then the lowest number of x's. On the next one, I got a 4, a 4, and a 4, and that's the biggest number that I have here. Okay, and they all have an x, so it's going to be 4x. Okay, that's another way of doing it, is list out all your factors, all the numbers that multiply to give you that 20 or 12 or whatever it is. Don't worry about the negatives. You're not going to be taking out negatives except for in special cases, and we'll be talking about that a couple of classes from now. But there we go. We've just found the GCF. Finding the GCF is really just the first part of the process. So we're going to skip over page 31 and go over to page 32. Oh, I got a couple of blanks to fill in, and I think I filled in the blanks on the pre-printable. So I'm going to take a second and fill in the blanks and then come back. Okay, so I'm back. I filled in some blanks for you. You can fill them in. You can pause and do that. But we're looking for the GCF. We're going to figure out what that GCF is. We're going to divide it out. We're going to write it down. Super important that you write down your GCF and your leftovers, the remainder. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how this all works and overkill it. I'm going to break it all down into prime factors and then show you why we get what we get. All right. So to do something into prime factors, you divide it. Remember, prime numbers are divisible by only one of themselves, and prime numbers include 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19 as a matter of fact. But those are probably what you're mostly going to need, are those numbers there if you have to build the prime factor tree. Once again, you can divide things out or just try and find all the divisors of the numbers involved in the problem and then figure out what your GCF is. Okay, so I broke it all down. So 6 is 2 times 3 and then 4 x's. And then 18 is 2 times 3 times 3 and 3 x's. And then 42 is 2 times 3 times 7 with 2 x's. So looking at for my GCF, they all have 2 x's. So I'm going to circle 2 x's and circle 2 x's and circle 2 x's. And I'm going to have my GCF is going to be x squared. Then I'm looking at my numbers, and I have a 2, and I have a 2, and I have a 2. I'm going to write it down, 2 times, and they all have 1, 3, a 3, and a 3, and a 3. So my GCF is 2 times 3x squared. So I'm going to have 6x squared. All right, and then I take that 6x squared, and I go back up here, and I divide each term by 6x squared. Okay, and then I need to write down my leftovers down at the bottom. Okay, so 6x squared divided, or 6x to the 4th divided by 6x squared gives me x squared. 6 divided by 6 is 1. Plus sign, once again, you're not going to take out a negatives unless it's a special case. 18 divided by 6 is 3. And then 3 x's, take 2 away, gives me an x. And then my last term is a minus sign. 42 divided by 6 is going to be a 7 right there. And the x's cancel out. So GCF factored out of 6x to the 4th plus 18x to the 3rd minus 42x squared would give me a GCF of 6x squared and leftovers of x squared plus 3x minus 7. You have to have parentheses around it. You have to write down the GCF, and you have to write down the leftover. Can't be missing. Okay. Let's slide on down. And this one's pretty straightforward. All right. First thing I see is there's no x's on the last term, so there's not going to be any letters coming out of this, no variables. And I got a 2, a 6, and an 8. I think that means that my GCF is going to be that lead coefficient. You're going to see that often, where the first number in your polynomial in standard form is going to be the number you're going to be factoring out. So I'm going to take out that 2. So I divide everything by 2. And I write down that 2, and there's my parentheses already there. What a nice guy Mr. Douglas is, leaving you that already set up. I get x squared plus 3x minus 4. All there is to it. All right. What we're going to find out later on is that we have to take a look at this, and we're going to have to factor that apart. All right. That's actually what we're going to be doing next class. All right. So that's the next step in the process. We're going to wind up with two binomials when we're done with that. So let's slide over to the next page. I'm going to do two more examples for you, and then you guys are going to get a little bit of practice. So on page 33, and I already broke down my 6x squared to 2 times 3 times x, and 15x is 3 times 5 times x. So I'm looking at that, and I see I have a 3 that they have in common, and an x that they have in common. So my GCF is going to be 3x, dividing each term by 3x. And that's going to give me a 2x plus 5. Then they want you to evaluate this when x equals 2 and this when x equals 2. All right, and we can do that, I guess. So if I do 6 parenthesis 2 squared plus 15 times 2, well, remember in my order of operations, 2 squared is 4. 4 times 6 is 24, so that's 24 plus 2 times 15 is 30. That's going to give me 54. Then over here, I'm going to have 3 times 2, parenthesis, not plus sign, Mr. Douglas. And then I'm going to have 2 times 2 plus 5. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 5 is 9. 6 times 9, 54. So just like that, we wind up with the same answer, which is good. All right. All right. So my turn to one more time to do one for you. And we're going to look at this. And once again, looking about what I got, this isn't in standard form. Okay. We could rewrite it in standard form, not necessary in this particular problem, but wouldn't be a bad idea. And I have x to the 5th here, a 7 and an 8. So the lowest exponent is a 5. So I can take out 5 x's. So my GCF down here is going to have an x to the 5th on it. Then I need to look at the greatest common factor of 8, 20, and 24. Okay. I don't have my calculator. It gives me the instructions up here on my Inspire on how to do that in my calculator, but let me just list it out for you. My factors of 8 are 1, 2, 4, and 8. Factors of 20 are 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20. My factors of 24 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, I'm off the page, 12, and 24. Okay, and what's the biggest number you see there? I see a 4, and a 4, and a 4. Now, sometimes when you're doing this, you may take out a 2. If you took out a 2, when you got all done, the leftovers would all be even numbers. You got to kind of take a look at that, because sometimes you won't notice the biggest number you can take out. And once again, it's the greatest common factor. So you got to look at the end and see if you have any common factors. Just like if I didn't take out 5 x's, if I only took out 4 x's for whatever reason, I'd wind up with an x on every term in here, and that wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be the greatest common factor. So I'm going to do a 4 here, and I'm going to cough in a second. So we divide each term by 4x to the 5th. 4x to the 5th, 4x to the 5th, 4x to the 5th. Just like the beginning of our lesson. And then I write down my leftovers now. In the beginning of the lesson, I just needed to divide it. I didn't need to write it, the GCF, the divisor here. This time I do. I'm going to get a 2x squared and a plus 5. X's are going to cancel. 5 x's, take away 5 x's, leave me x to the 0, which is just 1, minus 6x to the 3rd. Now, if they had that nasty little thing that says, write your final answer in standard form, you'd have to rearrange this, and that would be 4x to the 5th, parenthesis, negative 6x to the 3rd, plus 2x squared, plus 5. Once again, that's standard form, which isn't a bad thing to do. And if this was a computer-generated multiple choice answer, that's what it would look like, which sometimes throws us off. Okay, so let's take a look on page 34. And, why don't I do one more? And then you guys can do, well, if you think you're good at it, you can stop it now and do D, E, and I, then number 4 and number 5. You want to always, whenever you have an opportunity to practice multiple choice, practice the multiple choice, because that will give you an opportunity to look for what are they going to ask me when they're trying to trick me, because that's what they're trying to do with multiple choice, is trick you. I don't try and do that, but that's what they do. All right. So up on top, I got this nasty, disgusting thing, and I was going to make you guys do it, but I'm going to do it. And if you had your calculator, or if you work this out, you would find out that the greatest common factor of 104, 52, and 26 is 26. You'd also take a look at your A's and B's and see that you only have one A there and one B there. So every one of these is going to be 26AB. I'm going to do it 26AB, 26AB, and 26AB. And I write down 26AB because you always start out with that GCF, and then you write your leftovers. And if you fired up your calculator, 104 divided by 26 would give you a 4. 3 A's take 1 away, gives me an A squared. 2 B's take 1 away, gives me a B, plus sign. 52 divided by 26 is 2. 2 A's take 1 away is going to give me an A. 3 B's take 1 away, gives me a B squared. And then I got negative 26AB divided by 26AB. Well, you have to remember when you're dividing and you start with 3 terms, you end with 3 terms. That's why it's right there in bold for you. 26 divided by 26 is 1. A divided by A is 1. B divided by B is 1. So it's just going to be a minus 1. Okay, if this was multiple choice, one of your multiple choices would be right like that without that minus 1 on the back end. Gotta watch it. You gotta be careful and pay attention. Okay, so once again, you guys are trying those down at the bottom. I'm going to flip it off for a second and come back with some answers, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, so how did we do? Once again, we had one of those tricky ones at the end. Now make sure you wind up with the 3 terms. This one's pretty straightforward. Once again, that lead coefficient was our GCF. Same thing on the bottom one. Lead coefficient was the GCF and the X. So you went to the first thing you see and the last thing you see. That is really a common thing to happen when you go to do this GCF thing. Right? Don't always count on it. That's a good place to start to look. Then you get down to our 2 multiple choice questions, and they were both trick questions. They were both not questions, okay? Not questions are not fun, okay? We're looking for a bad factoring job, okay? So this one actually was the GCF. So if you didn't see that word not, and it's you thinking, oh, this is a GCF page, you may pick that one, okay? This one is a common factor, but it's not the greatest common factor. They didn't take out the X. This is the one that's wrong. 5 times 4 gives me 20X, not 40X. And this one would just be not a greatest common factor, but a common factor. Once again, 2 even numbers there, you could take out a 2, okay? Down the bottom, it's even weirder. Which one is not a factor? Okay, well, you can take out an X, and you can take out a 4 because the GCF is 4X. If you took out the 4X, you'd be left over with the X plus 3, so X plus 3 is a factor, and it's just the 3X that isn't. And where they're trying to get you is you go, oh, 3 times 4 is 12, and hey, there's an X, that must be it. Okay, once again, you're looking for what divides it, not what the leftovers are. Alrighty, so that is that. I do want to do one more thing with you today, and then there's an assignment in here for you. I think it is page 37, the odds, but that will be posted on Google Classroom, or a Delta assignment, whichever one you prefer, okay? You do it and turn it in. But I want to flip over to page 38 and show you a strange couple of problems. I'm going to do a couple, and then I'm going to leave a couple for you to do. But when you look at this, In fact, the first time I looked at this, I double distributed and combined the like terms. I was working like a superstar. And then I read the instructions. The instructions say, we want to leave this as the product of two binomials. Look at that. So they don't want you to double distribute here. Okay, so make sure you stop and read the instructions before you get going. All right. What they want you to do is factor it out. And that you're saying, well, how do you factor it out? Well, look at this. In the front seat, we got an x plus 1. And in the back seat, you got an x plus 1. So the greatest common factor here is x plus 1. So if I pull that out, x plus 1 in parentheses, and I start a parentheses and I do 5x, actually double parentheses, minus 7, then close it. Then this comes down, and then I do my x minus 3. Okay, that would be my first step there. I pulled out the GCF of x plus 1 from here and here, and that goes out in front. Double parentheses, okay, one for the entire thing, and then the binomials inside of it, and bring that sign between them down. Now we're back to the very beginning of the packet, and we're going to do keep, change, change. All right, so that's going to give me, I'm going to do it off to the side, 5x minus 7, and then I'm going to change that to a plus sign, and that's going to be a minus x and a plus 3, and that's going to give me 4x minus 4. So I consolidated all this into 4x minus 4, so my product of two binomials will be x plus 1 times 4x minus 4. Once again, they didn't ask us to double distribute it. They didn't ask us to do anything else to it. They just asked us to factor it out and leave it as the product of two binomials. And I'm going to do one more for you. And I'm going to do another one with a minus sign because I think they're a lot more difficult than the plus signs. The plus signs, you just be combining like terms between those two. So you're looking for your GCF, and it's in the front seat again. Sometimes they'll mess it up and they'll put it like, they'll have the x minus 3 here and the 2x plus minus 1 here. So you're looking for the two that are the same, okay? And it could be in the front seat or the back seat. So I got a 2x minus 1 and a 2x minus 1. So I'm going to write that down. And then I'm going to do my double parenthesis and a 2x plus 7. And then my minus sign comes down. And I got that x minus 3 again. Somebody got a little bored when they were doing this. X minus 3. And then close it. And then I do my keep, change, change. So this is just going to come down. I'm going to do a little shortcut here. 2x minus 1. Don't forget your parentheses. Sometimes we get going in a hurry and we forget to put parentheses around it. That would be bad. So I have 2x minus 1x. It's going to give me an x. And then 7 minus negative 3. I know I'm not doing the keep, change, change thing. I'm just cutting a little time out. That's going to be x plus 10. And that's my final answer. Why don't you guys try C and D? All right, and I will come back on in a second and give you the answers. And we'll go from there. Okay, so how did you do? All right, so C, the x plus 5 comes out. X plus x is 2x. 1 plus 8 is 9. And on D, 2x minus 1 and 2x minus 1 comes out. 3x plus 5. Keep, change, change. So minus x minus 4. We wind up with 2x minus 1 times 2x plus 1. All right, so once again, that's our lesson for today. GCF, greatest common factor. And there is a Delta assignment for you to work on that you should see on Google Classroom, or a packet assignment, which is also on Google Classroom, which I believe is page 37, the odds, which is right here, just taking the GCF and writing down the leftovers. And it's due the end of the week. There will be another lesson, God willing, coming out for you on Wednesday, which will be factoring, and that'll be due the beginning of the week. I may post one on Friday, but I will let you know that. And once again, you'll get your notifications. I appreciate you guys. and miss you. Wish I was standing in front of the room instead of sitting at my son's desk. And we will talk to you soon.